It's you, the Capital One Bank guy.
Oh my God. I am north of New Orleans on Interstate 12. My next turn is I-65, so I've got a ways to go here. Give me a minute. We got a commercial. And we have another commercial. Sorry, I'm trying to play music here. So give me a minute. I am going from Houston to Greenville, South Carolina. I'm going to go as far as humanly possible tonight until I fall asleep. But I'll be up here for a while. I'm just waiting on 3 very, very long commercials to get over with. Okay, there's the second long commercial, and I'll get back to the music. I've got a mix planned. This is experimental for me. I've never done the music mix thing before, but I confirm with the big boss lady that it could be heard. So hold on here. All right, almost there. Sorry. Here we go. What happened?
fast, reliable network makes it so easy to stay connected to our drivers.
Yeah.
Sorry, commercial time. And I can't get around it. So give me a second here. Coming up on Hammond, I am eastbound on I-10, north of New Orleans on Interstate 12. My next turn is 150 miles from here on Highway 65 in Alabama, heading northbound. I apologize, but I keep getting commercials on this play, and I gotta wait for it to shut up before I can move on. And I like jazz music. If you haven't figured that one out. Hold on. Almost there. Sorry, advertisements again. I use Spotify. I'm finding royalty-free music because you get in all kinds of trouble if you play music that's not royalty-free, apparently. And the only place I'm experimenting with is off of Spotify, and they run 3 30-second commercials back-to-back, which is mind-numbing because I'm used to the length of commercials on, let's say, YouTube, 15 seconds of that. But we are on I-10 eastbound. Out the right side is New Orleans down there someplace, and I-10 is going to swing back up and lock onto 12 and we'll back on 10 again. And I am trying to get as close to Greenville, South Carolina as my wakiness will make it tonight. I have my cruise sit on 62. I am getting 24.2 miles per gallon right now, which for a van is pretty good. Maybe another 10 seconds, we'll be off the commercials and we'll go back into this. I just enjoy listening to music at night when I'm driving, and I just wanted to share this with people to see if you enjoy it also. And we're back.
Sounds scary.
Obviously I do a lot of driving, and as I'm piddling along here, let's face it, driving is kind of an automatic thing at this point in life. You drive on autopilot, so my brain gets to wander. And I'm sitting here wondering about, there's a time in your life when you took about 5 years ago, because 5 years ago was a long time ago. And then, you get older, and then you talk about 10 years ago. And, then all of a sudden it's 20 years ago. And you're thinking back on how much the world has changed. The friends you've had, the places you've been to, and the experiences you've had. Little monumental things. Some you remember, some you don't. I remember reading somewhere that when you were young, you had your little core group of friends, and your friends would go out and play. You go out and do whatever. This is before the electronic world set in. And there was a day that you went out with all your friends, and you guys ran around and acted stupid and did your thing. You went out and played for the last time. And none of you realized it. But that was the last time you were going to get together and go do whatever. And that kind of struck me because I thought about it, and it kind of sunk in. you're a little kid, you watch cartoons. And there is a point when cartoons do not interest you, and I actually remember the day it happened. I don't remember how old I was, 17. I don't remember how old I was. I remember we were in a motel somewhere, and the TV was on, and it was some cartoon show was on, and I looked at it, and I looked away, and I looked back, and I went, this isn't even interesting. And I just remember going, I don't know why, but I remember that event. But I heard something on the radio the other day, and it caught me off guard. It said, at some point, when you're little kids, you pick them up, you carry them. It said, a day came when you set your child down for the last time and never picked them up again. And I had to stop and absorb that thought process. Like, wow, it's true. You pick your kids up a little, you pick them up, hold them. You're in a crowd, you're going upstairs or something. And the day came, you didn't do it. I don't remember. I don't. But wow. And I look back. I'm 57 years old right now, and I look back on my life, and I have been a World War II buff since I was 12, which is 1980. In 1980, going back to the end of World War II, was 35 years. Well, 35 years ago from today was 1991, which, as I'm standing here right now, doesn't seem like that long ago. And then again, from when I was a kid, World War II seemed like an ancient event that interested me. But I guess it's all perspective of time. They say life is like a roll of toilet paper. The closer to the end you get, the faster it goes. And wow, is that true? Because these days start coming quicker. When you were younger, you would tell a kid something wasn't going to happen for another 6 months, and you just fall down on the ground and die, because 6 months, you can't measure 6 months. And as an adult, 6 months is like Thursday. And then I started going back to what do I remember? How far back does my brain go? And I grew up in an airline family, and my dad was stationed in Honolulu when I was a kid. And we lived outside of San Francisco, and as an airline family, we traveled for free. And this, at the time, didn't strike me as odd, but I'm looking back on it, was Friday, we get off school, and my parents were divorced in the late 70s, and my mother would run us to the airport, stick us on a plane. We would fly to Honolulu, get there late Friday night, spend Saturday, and then Sunday late, we'd get on a plane and fly back, and then go to school Monday, and hang out with my dad on the weekend. Didn't cost anything, but the idea of flying to Hawaii for a weekend and coming back on a semi-regular basis was not that big of a deal at the time, but it was. But in the early 70s, before my parents were divorced, we were in Honolulu, and they used to have, I don't know if they have them anymore, but lifeguard stations. And it wasn't like, the Baywatch where they had, it looked like a condominium. It was just a two-person wide bench seat up in the air, and above it there was a cone-shaped roof. It looked like a dunce cap, and it was red. And I remember sitting up on that and looking up into the cone, and it was raw fiberglass. I had no idea what fiberglass was at that time in my life, but I remember the patterns of fiberglass that I remember seeing, because it wasn't that far away. And I saw a picture, my mother showed me an old black and white picture she had taken when we were there, we were kids, and it was in 1972, so I was 4 years old, and I remember that very specifically. And another event I remember as a child that was big was back in the 70s. It seems like neighbors, we lived in a neighborhood, everybody was up in everybody else's business in the neighborhood. You go out the front door and go 4 or 5 houses this way or 4 or 5 houses that way. You knew everybody. You knew all your neighbors. You were in their house, they were in your house. You knew everybody. And nowadays people don't really, we got something going on here. That isn't the way people do it as much anymore. I live in a townhouse, and the wife and I, we know some of our neighbors. We don't really hang around with any of them. I mean, it's just, the world's just there. Okay, something's happening up here. Lights on, lights on. Gotta use my flashers here. This keeps you from running up in you. I don't know what this is. Well, this guy thinks he's going somewhere. You're not. Jackwagon. Anyway, my friend, a couple of kids are all the same age, and all our friends were running around in the front yard kicking a ball, and it seems like all the neighbors were in our house, and they were all crowded around the TV. You know, this is before everybody had satellite cable internet and all that garbage. This is antenna television, and everybody was standing around in our living room because my parents had put an extension on the back of the house. We had this giant family room, and there was probably 30 people in there crowded on the TV. And I asked, as a kid, it's like, what's going on? And they said, my mother said, there was a plane load of people. People were trying to get on a plane and leave a war zone. And there were soldiers that were trying to jump on the plane and leave the war zone also, but the plane wouldn't stop, so they tossed a grenade at the airplane and put a hole in the wing or something to that effect. And now that I look back on it, it was the fall of Saigon in April of '75. And as a kid, great. As a kid, that doesn't really mean anything to you. All right, hold on a sec here. Hold on, I gotta make a radio call here. Whoa, hold on a sec. Hey, eastbound, they got convoy work up here. Get over into the hammer lane. Because, let's just randomly block the road. That's always a good idea. Huh, I'm glad they did that. Slow down. Well, they like their flashing lights, I'll tell you that. Oh, they're putting down new reflectors in the middle of the road. All right, that's cool. This guy moving over as he's standing here. Let's see what's going on up here. All right, back up to speed. And that was just something that was going through my head. When I was a kid, didn't realize it at the time, but all the World War II vets were in their 50s. They were all my age that I am now, and they were everywhere. But at the time, it didn't click to me. That's what I was looking at. But I like having time on the road where my brain gets to wander, because as a pilot, when I was flying for those years, you're busy. You're up there in a helicopter, you're waiting for something to go wrong, and you're jumping frequencies and making radio calls, and you're doing a lot of stuff in that airframe. You're busy. When you're driving, I'm still doing my aviation cross-check on my instrument panel, but it's not as stressful. It's two-dimensional. It's kind of simplistic. I don't want to say mindless, but it's kind of mindless, and it's more relaxing. It allows my brain to wander, and I really enjoy having the opportunity to let my mind just kind of drift around and think about things, life, and places and whatnot. And physically, I've never really had a lot of physical issues, and in the last 6-8 months, I've noticed my body's getting to where my back hurts. I get up and I gotta stretch, and I got a crack, and my knees crack, and I'm just noticing the aches and pains of old age are getting to me now. And when I get out of this, like I'm sitting here in this van cruising along, and when I get up and stretch, when I get out, I stand up, I'll lock my knees and stretch, and it kind of sounds like a gunshot. Not gonna lie. Randy, what's up, mister? Good driving. Yeah, I very much prefer to drive at night. I very much prefer. I just like the look. I like the feel. I like the cockpit lights. I like the fact that eventually a lot of this traffic will go away. Just oxidation. Yeah, true. I never wore glasses my entire life. When I got to 50, I bought a weak pair of reading glasses, As time went on, those reading glasses got slightly stronger, and now I actually wear glasses. And I can see in the distance just fine. So up close, I can't see much. But I noticed that happen. Apparently 50 is a pretty common cutoff for glasses, though. Or sunglasses. I wear those all the time. But I noticed that, like I said, when you roll out of bed, you kind of got to do a systems check, make sure everything works. You let the lubricant get flowing first, and then you get up and start moving around. And I've noticed that as I've gotten older, it's happening more frequently. So that's why people retire. When I was a little kid, you're trying to come up with what's the plan? What am I going to do when I'm an adult? What am I going to do when I'm a big kid? And I mentioned to my grandfather, I thought it would be kind of cool to work on heavy equipment, like those big tractors and road graders, go out and work on the highway. And I was like, as a kid, that seemed interesting because it's like a big Tonka toy. And my grandfather said, you don't want to do that because you're basically going to bash your body and get all beat up. By the time you're 40 years old, your body won't work. And I'm like, what are you talking about? You're crazy. Well, I know what he's talking about. Oh, do I know what he's talking about? Of course, you can get bashed up in aviation. I'm living proof of that. But I'll go into that someday. Just driving along here thinking about these things. I have, today's the 5th. I have another appointment at the VA on the 28th, so I'm basically going to stay out here on the road until the 26th or 27th, whatever that weekend is. I'll see what it is, and I'll get a run back to Texas, probably Laredo, and go from there. That's my thoughts going on. Got a few people jumping in and out. Has anybody got a question or a comment or something they want to talk about or a question to ask? Let's see. Going by my cruise speed 62. That's my standard cruise. I'm getting 23.9 miles per gallon, which for a big van is actually pretty good. I found a pilot back here at Bow Bridge, which is Beaux, Bow Bridge, Louisiana. It was a pilot at 214, and with my veteran discount, it was 204. So I just bought gas for 204, which, all things considered, is cheap. Though I was home for 2 weeks. That was kind of cool, actually. That's the longest I've been home here this year, and I enjoyed that. I have a new transmission. With the VA giving service members a second chance to die for their country since 19. Pretty much. Now the VA had a lot of problems there for a while, up into the 80s. I think they were having problems, but they've straightened out their act. They've kind of got their act together now, and I don't have any complaints at this point. I've had some procedures done there. They've done me right. So apparently, I don't know which president did it, but they straightened out the VA. But there was a time when the VA was a dumpster fire. And it's funny to go in there because you see, I'm saying this word, old guys like myself. You see all the old guys walking around, and they all wear their military hats. You've not been to Birmingham. Ironically, I've been to Birmingham. I've actually been to that VA. I was on the road a few years ago, and I have a couple of weird things I'm allergic to, and I had an allergic reaction, and I went into the Birmingham VA, and they actually helped me out. I didn't see the whole building. I went into the ER, and they took care of me and gave me something. This was years ago, but I haven't seen the rest of the building. The one in Houston, as I understand it, is either the biggest or one of the biggest in the country. And they're pretty good there. And I really have no complaints against them. Okay, I have one complaint. The parking is terrible. They don't have enough parking. And where I live is about 40-ish miles away. And as long as it's the summertime, I actually, when I go down there, every once in a while, I'll actually go down in my scooter. My Suzuki Bergman. I got a Suzuki 200 scooter, and I'll ride it on the HOV lane on the interstate because I have a concrete wall on either side of me when I'm doing it. And I'll boogie down there and I can park right up front. So that's something I've done. I've been down there twice on the scooter. It's kind of an adventure. Yeah, I know this guy behind me is mad because I moved over, but that's an exit lane. Yeah, but that was the, I've been to the VA here in, the one in Houston, Birmingham, and one that was in, I want to say Omaha or Lincoln, Nebraska. Same problem. Are in West Chicago and Vanderbilt, Nashville. Haven't been to those. But those are the other three I've been to. But the one in Houston's huge, absolutely monstrous. And I made a video about this. The parking lot is covered, but it's not solid. You look up, the entire parking lot is covered with solar panels. And I thought that was kind of a cool thing to do since it's real estate. They're not using for anything else. What is this guy doing? Hold on. Looking out the windows. All right. Okie dokie. All right, we're back down to 2 lanes. Vanderbilt, West Chicago. I'm a little scared of Chicago. I've been there a few times, but I'm a little scared of the area. They got kind of a bad reputation, violence-wise. So on the 2 weeks I spent at home, the wife was super trucker coming through. That's that's right. I get over here on the right lane and I go 62. Why? Gas mileage. Every vehicle's got its sweet spot. This one like 62, 63. Anything above that, the mileage plummets. And I watch these big trucks, obviously not paying for the fuel, and I watch vans like this go flashing past me. And I know what happens when they're driving like that. The mileage goes down into the teens. And I need this van to last, so I kind of take it easy and let everything go on around me. I don't get in the middle of that. Here's what's weird, I run a radar detector. I don't need it, but I like to know what's going on around me, so I have one. It's not a fancy one. Yeah, super trucker. I haven't heard that in a while, that phrase. Ooh. We were home, the wife and I put in, we have a courtyard, a walled-in courtyard. That's the downtown Chicago VA. Hines is the west sewer there. We have family, not anymore, but my dad grew up south side of Chicago in a town called Midlothian. I can't find it on a map even other than it's south side of town. I don't know what's going on there now, but I remember as a kid going out and visiting. And I was in Chicago 3 weeks ago, and I drove all night to get someplace and did a delivery, and then I stayed at a Love's, I think, spent the night at a Love's, and then I got up and went to the Chicago Museum of Natural History, which I posted another video. It's $25 admission, but I got my VA card, so I got it free. And I went and shot some video of the U-505 submarine. Again, like I said, I'm a World War II buff, and I like to be able to touch history. You walk up to that submarine, you can put your hand on it. I enjoy that. In Fredericksburg, Texas, there's a big World War II. It might be the Nimitz Museum. I don't know if that's what they call it, but it's in Fredericksburg. It's huge. It has 2 miles south of my house. Okay, Elson. Yeah, I've been there too. Yeah, but if you've ever seen a bunch of pictures of the Pearl Harbor attack, one of the photographs shows a little midget sub in the surf. They launched 5 midget subs. One of them got shot full of holes before the attack even started, but of course nobody believed it. They found it in 2002 out beside the bay, but one of them got spun around backwards, ended up getting beached, and one of the guys died. There's a 2-man crew, and one of them lived. So the first POW they had was taken from that sub, and if you see the pictures of it, it's up in the surf. Well, that actual submarine is in the museum in Fredericksburg, Texas, and again, you can walk up and touch it with your hand, and I really enjoy being able to put hands on a target like that. Many years ago, this is different now, but I was driving through Nashville, and there is a tall bridge. This is an east-west run. There's a tall girder, what I call a girder bridge with all the framework, which out west they don't really have those. And there's an island. You can look down, and there's like an island in the middle of the river, and it looks like parachutes. And I saw it, and I got off the highway and zigzagged around and got out on that island in the Memphis Belle. Yeah, it was not Nashville, it was Memphis. The Memphis Belle was there, and I thought that was cool. And you can go see it, and the B-17 bomber, they say it was the first bomber to complete 25 missions. It actually wasn't. It was the first bomber to complete 25 missions and made it back to the States, because the first one that actually did it was a B-24 called the Hot Stuff, and it crashed in Iceland in fog on the way back, got destroyed. So it didn't make it back to the States for the war bombs. The first Tomahawks used in combat came off our ship, Tomahawks. Oh, you mean the missiles? I'm thinking an actual Tomahawk. We started the day. Oh, you're talking about the Gulf War? The ones they barf them out of the launcher and they pop open like a switchblade knife and away they go? Is that what you're talking about? I've seen the videos. Yeah, there was a, I remember CNN showed he's standing around talking to people in the Gulf, and they would go flying by the Tomahawks and zip by the cameras, various heights. That's cool. I've seen them. I've seen video of them drop from B-52s and they fall, and like I said, they snap open like a switchblade. The wings pop out, and the tail pops out, the engines ignite. Our first Tomahawks. The 109 out of VLS vertical launching. Yeah, that's what I mean. They barf them out. If it's like the missiles I used to fire, you have a launch motor. It gets them, it barfs them out, and then you have a flight motor that kicks in. I used to fire the TOW anti-tank missile, and you had a launch motor that would spit it out of the tube. It's 150 Gs, give a thump, and then the flight motor would ignite. It would burn for 1.5 seconds, and then it would shut off and glide the rest of the way. 61 missiles per launcher? 61 cells per module. What do you mean by cells? I don't know what you're referring to. Is it like cluster bombs? Because I knew they used to fly, some kind of missile would fly over airfields and barf bomblets, and then the missile would pull up and fly straight up in the air, whip a 180, come down and do a death dive and kamikaze into the ground at the airfield. Is that what the weapon system you're talking about? Whoa, stay on the road. I'm sensing you're old like me. It's from the 80s and 90s. 3 were for the loading crane, 64 modules. I'm not sure what that means. I'm talking about modules. I don't know what you're referring to exactly. So I have another 115 miles to go on this road. I watched a crane, military ships getting unloaded. Total 122 weapons possible. Jeez. The magazines. Yeah, I watched unloading military aircraft. That van right there has passed me like 4 different times now. It's a Dodge ProMaster with a budget car rental sticker on it. That guy keeps getting off and getting back on and driving real fast. It was those cranes that unload ships. The ship kind of drives under it, and it's a crane that's on both sides of the dock, and the big old ships go under it, and it drops down, picks up these huge Conex boxes. I watched them unload it, and then somebody blew a horn, and it looks like a control tower. You see some arms up there moving around, and then it opened, and out came this little girl who looked like she was 12 in military uniform. kind of go, I'm sorry, you have a 12-year-old operating your crane? That caught me off guard. I look like a little kid. Okay, today's the 5th of January, and I'm looking around, and I keep seeing Christmas lights up at these businesses along the highway, and I see the Merry Christmas signs and all this stuff. Okay, people, it's been a couple weeks now. You can pull that stuff down. Seriously, you can take that stuff down. Oh. Let's see what we're doing on the gas. Okay, for some reason, my gas mileage is starting to back off. I'm at 23.8. I wanted us to come on here and babble. That's how I entertain myself going down the road. My wife, I want to say my wife and I, but my wife was working on shelving to help within limits, but she likes to do the work. She put some shelves in our hallway, fancy steampunk brackets. Those are torpedo boats, man. 46, Mark 46. Mods guy, got it. So you were a squid, is what you're saying. We had the Cobra, the helicopter I flew in Vietnam. They had rockets called Mark 40s, and they were just generic spears, and you shot them, and they went wherever they went. They would go bam when they hit, and they had fins that popped out the back. By the time I got in the military, it was called a Mark 66 rocket, and it had these little pop-out fins. And we would go to the range. On a modern war, in a modern war, the rockets are kind of useless because, back on the road. You have to climb. You can't fire them laterally because you can't hit anything. They're like bottle rockets, point and shoot. But you can't climb up to dive because you're going to get shot down. So rockets are kind of, but they're fun to play with on the range. And we were playing on a range with rockets, and when you shoot a rocket from a helicopter, you have, this is a Cobra helicopter. This is old school. You had a mechanical box, RMS, rocket management system. And you had little dials, and you would shoot what's called mode times quantity. Mode, single pair quad. Quantity, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 2 pair. You'd fire 4 rockets, 1 pair. 4 quad. You would ripple fire the missiles out, and you're flipping through the switches. And one of the settings was the letter A, which I had not seen before. And I'm flying with Mike. I said, Mike, what's A? He goes, oh. I pull out the book. I flip through the pages. Don't use A. Yeah, right. Right. Tell me not to do something. So we're out here hovering on this range, and we've got these. They're not explosive rockets. They're what we call blue spears or training rockets. They just shoot, hit the ground, and nothing. So they're not going to go boom. But you have 38 rockets on board. It was 19 on each side, and we had a full load because we were out goofing around. Went to E1 under design, made E5 twice, and got out E2. I went in as enlisted. I crewed M1 tanks. Went in as an E nothing. Made it to E4. Applied for and got accepted to flight school, Army Warrant Officer School. I got my orders from 3 Corps. I was not promoted to E5. I was appointed. So I just marched my happy little self down to the PX and bought a pair of rank and put them on and came back to work. And they said, you can't do that. Why not? I got my orders. Well, you weren't promoted. No, I was appointed because you have to be at least an E5. And I became a warrant officer. Graduated flight school as what's called a WOJ, a warrant officer junior grade, W1, and then became a W2. And then Bill Clinton got elected, and we all lost our jobs. But yeah, it was fun while it lasted. I would have stayed, but or was I? I was babbling about something. I've already forgotten. Oh well, old age, that happens. Oh, the rockets. So we're out on a range, and we've got 38 of these rockets, and there's this big hill in the middle of the range. We kind of hover over on the other side of this hill where we can't be seen by range control. We're kind of out of sight, out of mind, but kind of in front of us, but off to the side, there was a bunch of people with a Humvee standing there watching us as we're just observing something new. And I dial up A, and Mike hits the trigger in the back seat. Apparently A stands for all. because it wasn't ripple fire, it was everything went out the tube at the same time. 38 rockets, whoosh. And because they are so close together, when the fins pop out, they all started colliding with each other. One of which bounced off the airframe next to my seat. That wasn't the bad part. The bad part was all that exhaust gas came out and got sucked into the air inlet, and the aircraft started to overtemp. And we had a mild compressor stall. And Mike was flying it at the moment, so he had to dump the power over this ridge, and then we didn't want to hit the ground, so he starts backing up. We start flying backwards down this hill, leading the way with the tail rotor until the aircraft calmed down and pulled power. We didn't hit anything, thank God. And pulled back up to this ridge, and we looked up, and there's blue spears stuck in the dirt. You know, they're all over the place. You look over at that hilltop. You remember those guys that were watching us? Yeah, they're gone. I'll be sitting there, but there were like 10 people gone. It's whoops. Flew back over, and it's like, oh yeah, we're messing around, we're not doing that. Yeah, the military was a fun experience to have. I'm glad I served my time. I'm glad I got to be in it. I enjoy having the VA benefits. You'd be surprised how many places give you a discount by asking for whipping out your VA card, and they'll give you 10% off of anything. Restaurants and stores, just about anything. Haircuts. It's a nice little ditty. And that also gave me my pilot's license while I was able to fly and have an aviation career. Blew through the pillars of ship going 22 knots. Oh wow. That's some serious speed for that location. Yeah, I've been doing this YouTube thing. I started in 22, just goofing off. I never got into war stories. I may at some point, but not right now. I don't feel like talking war stories. I can talk stupid stuff we did, but war stories maybe some future day. A lot of the stupid we did in the M1 tank was fun. We had a good time with that. We were at I'll give you an example, 1987 or 88, Fort Hood, which goes on for days, has right in the middle of the base, there's the gunnery and artillery ranges are in the middle, and it's kind of like a wagon wheel. If you look at it from overhead, in the middle where the hub is there's a mountain, and that's like the backstop, and all the spokes facing inward are firing at that range. Now if you're on this side of the wagon wheel, it's 10 miles, 12 miles the other side of the wagon wheel, so, but we're all shooting into the middle towards that mountain. That's the backstop, and it's like an individual range is like it's like a bathtub. You're up here at the top of the range, and there's berms on either side, so when you enter the range you actually dip down, and you drop down like 30-40 feet into this valley, and you're shooting. So you turn your gun left or right, you're going to hit an embankment, either way. But it's wide. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's like a third of a mile wide, and then it goes 5-6 miles down to the end. You don't actually go down to the end. And then, again, there's bathtub ranges, and we used to go out there and do live fire. And Fort Hood is an open range, meaning there's cattle walking around. I mean, they're just wandering around here and there. It's kind of weird. And they had, back in the 80s, they had a problem with these people they called, aft lookout sightseer. Yeah. That's about what the aft kind of do. Oh, gotta move over again. So when you're firing on the ranges, you would have what's called a safety guy, which is a tank that would go across the road behind the range and get up high and be looking, because the range control guys can't see in the dark. We could with the thermals in case there were any cattle down there, or range or grass pickers. So you would go to the field for, let's say, 3 days to go do gunnery, and you don't want to be out there. Nobody wants to be stuck out there in the heat all summer, for 3 days. So let's get out, get it over, get back to the bears, get in the shower, get in the air conditioning. So if you were looking at your thermal sights and you saw somebody walking around down range, they would have to send someone down there to run them off, which are brass pickers. And these guys would run down there, and of course the brass pickers would disappear, and then we go back to fire, and then they'd reappear and be stealing slugs and generators and stuff. And the problem was, every time they shut the range down, it made us stay out there just a few hours or days longer, so we started getting tired of that. So one day we got out there and they were driving a Jeep, like a, let's see, north, still going this way, a Jeep, like a CJ5 Jeep. You could see it down there. And they sent a Humvee down there and the Jeep disappeared, drove somewhere, disappeared. And we went back to live fire and then the Jeep reappears and they call us, anybody down there? And I said, nope. So the next tank, we looked down the hill and the tank was getting ready to fire. You can see his gun tube looking around and he's looking at the same Jeep. He can see it and there's two people next to it. And the two guys next to it get out and you can see them walking away from it. And the range goes hot. And the first round out of that guy's gun, now the training ammunition doesn't go boom, it's just a slug. But the first round out of his cannon hit the Jeep. And the Jeep laid over on its side. And the range control guy says, oh, we're not getting a sensing on the target because there's targets sense and impact. Oh, no, he hit it. And then he goes and proceeds to shoot more targets. And then the next tank goes out in the dark. And apparently they're down the hill having a conversation about this because the first round out of his gun hit the Jeep. Put a big old slug through it. And we're like, I don't see nothing. And everybody got one round, about 8-10 tanks put a round through that Jeep. Those guys took off. I never saw them again. Nothing ever happened with it. We got to get done with gunnery and get out of there. But that was one of those fun things we did. Nobody ever said anything about it. Nobody ever called us to the carpet. Oh, the good old days. There was another thing they did, and I think I've told this story on here before, but for the 2nd Armored Division, they would have what's called a duty company, which is as bad as it sounds. Duty company means you're being put on, let's call it, poop detail, where you get loaned out for slave labor for some project going on base. Excuse me, on post somewhere, and it was our turn to be duty company, and there was maybe 8. I was a private at the time, and they give us $1.50, and they say, your duty company, this would be great. So they send us over to wherever we had to go to meet up. And the guy said, go to Division ASP, which is the ammo supply point. Get me started. Will you see my track record? Well, we went to the Division ASP. Now, ammunition has a shelf life, like 15 years, and after that it's considered unstable, and they get rid of it. So they went through the lot numbers, and they found old artillery rounds and tank rounds and stuff, and they need to get rid of them. And the military's answer of getting rid of everything, the Navy, it's probably throw it in the ocean, but the Army, it's bury it. So they give us crates of ammunition, and it was, we're supposed to take it down to one of those ranges I told you about. Just showing it. Are you a trucker? No, I'm not gay. No, I am an expediter, which is essentially, found you on my YouTube recommended. Oh, thank you very much. I am now recommended. I am an expediter, which is kind of a low-budget truck driver. I drive a box van. And I'm doing the same job, it's just a whole lot easier because I'm not paying for this big expensive truck. I get way better gas mileage. I don't have to operate under a CDL. I don't keep logbooks, and I can drive as much as I want. 50 miles out, throw it out. That's it. Whoa, you pick a lane. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The Navy does it differently, but the Army buries it. So what they did was they gave us a map. And one of the ranges was it was cold. It wasn't in operation. And they tell us, go down to whatever range, and you're gonna find a big hole that's been dug, and go gently place this ammunition in this hole, and the engineers are gonna come back and bury it. Yeah. So anyway, we get out there, and of course we're busting the crates open to see if we can find to play with. There's some belted ammunition. There's some mortar rounds, tank rounds, artillery. There's no hand grenades. No hand. On an Army post, there's 2. What's my favorite car? It depends on what you're doing. I'm a Volkswagen Bug fan. I've owned a fleet of them. I've had 5 in my life. But there's 2 things you can find on every Army post. Concertina wire And it was. Looks like I fell offline and came back. I don't know how that happened. Anyway, a tank round. I don't know what artillery is, but a tank round is not fired by a firing pin. It is fired by an electrical charge. That's why when somebody sneaks on base and steals a tank gun round and takes it home and sets it on their carpet, eventually a static electricity is going to set it off, and it's going to be an exciting day. But it takes an electrical charge. Well, we're tankers, and we know this, so we have this deuce and a half full of ammunition, which we are tossing into this ditch, and the crates are breaking open. And this one idiot that looked shockingly similar to me said, "Hey, why don't we set this stuff off for fun?" Duh. So we went and found some WD-1 wire, which is everywhere. We attached it, we taped it to the back of one of these rounds down in this ditch, and we had probably 200 yards of WD-1 wire. Just like the Sea Rules, yeah. And we ran about 200 yards of this wire, and the deuce and a half has a hood that you open up, it has a little stick. The guy's name was Curry. Curry says, "Okay, I'm going to touch it to the battery posts and see what happens." Well, he touched it to the battery posts. Yeah. Well, anyway, when I woke up, I was behind the deuce and a half, rolled up in a ball, covered in a white soot, looking up at the Hiroshima mushroom cloud we just created. And couldn't hear a thing. And jumped up, dusting up. Ooh, state line. Look at this. Mississippi, on the right. See the sign? Hold on, gotta honk. Here we go. Okay, now we're in Mississippi. Anyway, couldn't hear a thing. Run to the front of the truck. The shock wave or the blast has blown the hood open and slammed it shut. And Curry, who's bent over, all we saw was his feet sticking out. Had to get him out of there. And individual machine gun bullets started raining out of the sky on top of our heads. And we left, and there was this big black cloud hanging over this whole valley. We're like, that never came back to bite us. I'm really surprised we didn't get called to the carpet, but nobody ever said anything to us about that. We just drove back to the motor pool and stood around going, doo-doo. We got a welcome center coming. I am not stopping. An 03 Jetta wagon. Why specifically the 03 Jetta and the wagon? I'm just curious. Also, something about being in the military. It seems like everything else you do in your life is easy. You ever notice that? Military was tough, you get out, and everything else like, whatever. Nothing bothers you. You know, employers, by going by Wythall? I didn't see the names. Is that a town up here? I don't recognize the name. Why not? Going by Why Not? Is that a town? Is it getting foggy outside? It's getting foggy outside. But I can see that. Yeah, you see how the moon's all faded out? Yeah. Oh, okay. Now it cleared back up again. All right. Must have been just that area. Yeah, employers like to hire military people because they're trained differently. You know, when the boss says, "Hey, go get a hot tub with 300 gallons of green Jello, 2 goats, some mayonnaise, a ping pong ball, and a video camera. Oh yeah, and a shovel." Military guy, a veteran, will go, "Okay." A non-military person will go, "Why? How come? What for? What are we doing?" Guys are like, "I don't care." Yes, depending on what highway. I'm on either 10 or 12. If 10 came back up and met me, I'm on 10 officially. So I'm just past the border eastbound out of Louisiana into Mississippi. I have another 93 miles to go. I'm turning north on 65 towards Montgomery. And I'm trying to get to South Carolina. I got a delivery. I don't really have a delivery time, but I like to get there as soon as possible to get back on the board. And I like driving at night because of traffic. And it's also, I don't know, it's more soothing to drive at night. which is what I'm doing right now. That guy's hungry. There you go. Let's see. Oh, eastbound. Yeah. Yeah, like Smokey and the Bandit. Yeah, I don't know if you can tell, but there's woods on both sides, and the road is separated, so you don't have anybody coming at you. When I get out in the middle of nowhere, I like to go high beams, and this transit van's got high beams that are like... High beams are like buckets. You used to drive flatbeds. Oh, sorry. Drove flatbeds. Yeah, my uncle was a truck driver from the late 1960s until about, I want to say 2012. He physically couldn't do it anymore. He died in 23. So he had way over 50 years of driving under his belt. He really did. And he has driven. When I started doing that, if you want to get back into driving, I would recommend Expediting. It's just paperwork. There's no DOT. There's no way station. This is like driving your car. But when I first started driving here during COVID, so I I'd be out of town and I'd call my uncle and I'd be asking him advice on do this or do that, and he, where are you? I'm on Highway 42 in Connecticut. Okay, what was the last town you saw? And I give him a name. He goes, are you going uphill or downhill? I'm going downhill. He goes, okay. At the bottom of the hill, you're going to see a Napa auto parts store. You want to turn right there and drive down and da-da-da-da-da-da. You know, and I'm like, what? And sure enough, there's a Napa auto. Anywhere in the United States, I was on any road, he could tell me what was coming up and what was there. Absolutely mind-boggling. You say 1.37 million miles medically possible. Yeah, I know how that works. I was a commercial pilot. I flew helicopters for 35 years. And we don't do miles, we do hours. I had 16,900 hours of experience, and I medically can't do it anymore. To be honest with you, I kind of lost my taste for it, so I got into the medical. The last job I had for the last year was medical helicopter, and that is a ultra regulated, micromanaged, busybody, nitpicky, not a lot of fun flying, and honestly, it left a bad taste in my mouth. They record every conversation you have. They record the instrument panel. They record everything the airframe and aircraft does. So they know how you took off, landed, turned, started, shut down, what you said, who you said it to. And then you have a medic and a nurse in the back seat that are little Beavis and Butthead busybodies that, you know, always have something to say about what you're doing. And it just, after a while, it just wears you down. You just get tired of hearing you. Basically, you have two self-loading bags with an opinion about what you're doing. And it makes it really difficult. I did that. I made it a year. That was it. Camera. And it was a camera between the seats looking down at the instrument panel. It shows physically what the airframe is doing. And it is a computer chip. Oh, there's the fog again. A computer that records the attitude of the aircraft. Lean left, lean right, nose up, nose down. How much power you're pulling. What the instruments are doing. It records everything you do so somebody can pull that chip out, sit at their desk, and then Monday morning quarterback everything you did. Literally everything you did is now being scrutinized by somebody who's not in the aircraft. You know, coming up below, well, gee, you should have this, you should have, shut up. You know, you get tired of that kind of stuff. A moonshine night, yeah. It's getting foggy out here. This is kind of cool. Yeah, but my last flying job that I had, that medical job, we had a Bell 407, and it was the first aircraft I ever got to fly that had essentially an autopilot. And that was kind of nice, because helicopters are inherently unstable, whereas airplanes want to fly in a straight line. Helicopters don't. You could dial up, be climbing and hit the altitude. It would level off of that altitude, hold hard at whatever you told it to sit at, and then you could dial up a target, a GPS or a destination, and tell the helicopter go there, and it would just fly to it. You could basically let go of the controls and look out the window and just watch your instruments, and the aircraft would fly itself. And if you wanted to not have a target, or you wanted to go around, an open expanse of water, you could take this little, it's called a bug. It was a little dial. You could take the dial and move it, and the aircraft would follow the bug. You could get off navigation and just follow the heading. So you could turn a little to the right, and the aircraft would start to go to the right, and it would straighten out, and you could twist it back left, and the aircraft would follow the bug. Wherever you twisted this little knob, and I was like, this is a way to work. Here, you kick back, and you sit up, and look out the window, and flip your goggles down, night vision goggles, look around, nothing out there, flip up, check the panel. This is cool. Somewhere back in my playlist, there's a few videos I shot from the cockpit. Not supposed to, but if you keep the camera over on the right side, they couldn't see you had your phone. You talk about driving and texting. Try flying and texting. I mounted my camera, and there was a place flying between Victoria, Texas, which is down the coast, coming up towards the Houston area and Richmond. There are solar farms that go on forever. I mean, just forever. And I had my camera mounted, and I just recorded the solar panels. They were, God knows how many hundreds of acres of solar panels. We just flew over this area. So look at this. It's absolutely everywhere. I'd say it's farmland, but it's really not, because you can't grow anything in that area. But they are crazy about solar panels out there. All right, we've been on here for an hour and 50 minutes, and I'm probably going to bail off here and put on some jazz music, which I really enjoy. Then I'm going to listen to that. If it gets weird or interesting later, I may come back on here, but for right now, I'm going to take a break. I'll catch up with you guys later. Whoop, wrong button.